Hi there. We're now going to speak about some methods of joining materials together mechanically. Um, Cover a few things. We're going to talk about nuts and bolts, firstly. Nuts and bolts. We're going to talk about screws, rivets, and we'll briefly touch on welding. So firstly, nuts and bolts. Most of you will be familiar with what they look like. This is a bolt, and this is a nut. As you can see, it's sort of a threaded piece of material. In this case, it's got a hex head. This is the corresponding nut, and one simply winds onto the other like so. They're primarily used for joining two pieces of material together. So if I have two pieces of material like so, the nut and bolt simply, this is the bolt, goes right through the two pieces, and the nut screws onto the end like so. In addition to this, there are washers we can use. So if these materials are like a soft material, or they require the load to be spread out over a larger area, a washer is quite a good idea. It's simply a ring of metal. So it's over the bolt, so that'll then sit in the material. Another washer on the bottom potentially, and wind the two together. Other nuts include sort of locking nuts, half nuts. A common locking nut would be a Nyloc nut. So I'll just write that down. Nyloc. L-O-C-K. And basically, the Nyloc nut is similar to this, except at the top there's a ring of nylon, which, as you screw into it for the first time, will form a thread, or will have a thread formed on the inside of it, and that will form a nice tight seal and stop the bolt from unwinding over use and cycles and things. A couple other bolts that we have, and there's this one. There's a countersink bolt. You'll notice the helically screwed part at the end is more or less the same, but the shape of the head is different, and this allows for the bolt to be countersunk. So it looks more like this. And two pieces of material. So you would drill your hole right through the piece of material, and then you get a countersink drill bit, and that allows this to be put in and set flush to the surface, or slightly below if need be. Similarly, we have cap screws, which can have the same thing. So again, it's a hex, drive, same style, but on this one you would counter bore. So this is a countersink. I'll write that here. And then a counter bore, as the name suggests, you bore slightly down. And yeah, the bolt goes in, to below or flush with the surface. The thing I was just taking off there is a wing nut. And the wing nut is useful for like lids and things where you don't want to get your tools out all the time to open and close stuff. So a wing nut's really useful for that. This is counter bore. You do get counter bore drills, and effectively you drill your hole, and then the counter bore drill is like the male version of that, if you like. So it's not a standard drill. It's this shape, and then it has cutting edge there. And so this part goes into the hole you've drilled at the correct diameter, and this boring part is to clearance the head of the bolt. Okay, so that's nuts and bolts. Screws are next. This is what a screw looks like for those of you who didn't know. Oh, it's rolling all over the place. It's pointy, it's got a helical thread up it, and screws are good for holding things onto walls, for instance. So this is your wall, and you have something lightweight that needs to be hung on the wall and sit flush to it. You can simply screw right in, like so. If you had something more heavy to be hung, what you could do is use a roll plug. And the way we do that, there's a bit that we're hanging again, wall, you pre-drill a hole in the wall. You insert one of these, which is a roll plug. I'll write that down, R-A-W-L plug. Insert that into the hole, and then the screw goes into there. Now, this would be good for like a hollow wall, you know, like a plasterboard wall. So say it's only that depth. And the way this works, as the screw goes in, you'll see the sort of fault line that opens up, and it stops the roll plug being able to fall out of the wall. Okay, so for hanging slightly heavier things. Beyond that, there are roll bolts. They're sort of one-piece item, and they will go even more heavy duty. And that's basically most about screws. Rivets. Rivets is next. That's a little pop rivet there. Riveting is for attaching two sort of thin pieces of material together, and basically this piece of metal here deforms. So maybe I'll zoom in a little bit, see if we can get a good view. Focus the camera. Right, so yeah, you can see here a bit better now. This is two pieces of material. Alright, you've got a pin, and then this bit is like a little top hat shape. And the way it works, you have your hole drilled in your two pieces of material that you're joining together. This one back there. Two pieces of plate. Hole drilled right the way through, so that then inserts, and the rivet gun will effectively draw the rod through the top hat, and that will deform the top hat, squeezing the two plates together. And that's how riveting works. It's the most interesting job in engineering, it's riveting. Okay, lastly, I'll talk a little bit about welding. Welding is a sort of permanent method of joining materials. Has to be the same material that you use for both parts. You couldn't weld steel to aluminium or stainless. So here's an example of an outside corner weld. You can see it's quite thin aluminium material, and the sort of weld bead along the outside there. There's a welding video that goes into more detail about this. The thing to note is that it's important that on thin material especially that you tack at each end, and that'll stop the deformation as you're working your way along. That's pretty much all we've got to talk about with joining materials. Thanks very much.